What's going on, people? It is Irish Gunner HD here, you can call me Irish, and welcome to part 3, the final part of my GTA 5 on PC, not necessarily benchmarking, but just kind of having a look at the performance and the kind of settings and stuff like that and frame rates of the game on my particular setup, which is an Asus Nvidia GTX 970 Strix, kind of 4GB, 3.5GB, however you want to think of it. And an Intel i5 3570K overclocked to 4.2. Now the GPU doesn't have an overclock applied because I didn't do it for the first test, so then I decided not to do it with the second test and the third test. You could obviously, it's free performance essentially. You can overclock it to crazy high settings for absolutely no cost. So I do usually run that, but since I forgot to run it for the first one, I might as well. There's no point in using it on these ones. So yeah, so it's a completely stock GPU, and then 4.2 on a Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo cooler. So yeah, that's basically that. So if you haven't seen part 1 and part 2, basically I went and had a look at the game, played on absolute max settings, and well, almost max settings. I made a couple of mistakes. I didn't realize some of the settings had ultra options, but yeah, other than that, then everything was maxed out. Part 2, everything was absolutely minimum, completely all sliders down to the left, all the options on normal or off or whatever. And now this is basically what I found to be the minimum that I'll go as far as appearance goes, while getting a reasonable frame rate for most of the time. So if you watch, again, if you haven't watched part 1 or part 2, I'll leave the annotations on the screen, links in the description to go and check those out. But what was I going to say? So yeah, so basically this is the settings that I've settled on that I won't go below. I basically won't go below this, and even though on some occasions I'll be down into the low 40s, very occasionally into the 30s, which is really frustrating for my system. As you can see, we're only using 2.5 gigabytes, so there's no reason for that. So while the game is optimized, there is a big performance difference between maximum and minimum settings. There's something not completely right about it. Where an overclocked CPU and a 970 can't reach a stable 50 or 60 frames per second no matter what on these settings. So basically we're just going to have a look here and just kind of run through them quickly. So FXAA off, MSAA 4 times, with Nvidia TXAA on, because I don't see why not. I need to turn that off. I actually play with VSync on because I don't mind any kind of input lag. I don't really notice it. I'm not really terribly sensitive to input lag, so unless it's obviously like a Twitch shooter like Battlefield or whatever. But yeah, so VSync off just to see what kind of maximum frame rates we're getting. I'll just apply that before we continue. Yeah, so then pause game and focus loss off, because I've heard that causes some kind of problems. Population density and variety halfway. I'm not particularly fussed on how dense the population it is, or how densely populated the game is. I personally think that like it's almost annoying when there's too much traffic and stuff like that, if you're trying to get somewhere during a mission and you end up crashing a lot or whatever like that. So I don't have any problem dropping them down. They don't affect the memory usage, as you can see, but just maybe you're gaining an extra couple of frames. I wouldn't say so, but you never know. Distance scaling, again, being on PC, I'm not willing to go any lower than absolutely maximum on distance scaling, so that's just why I've done that. Texture quality is only on high. Then shader quality, sorry, is very high. Shadow quality high. Ultra reflection quality 8 times reflection MSAA. Water quality and particle quality both very high. Grass high, and the soft shadows now. The soft shadows, I haven't properly tested them in depth yet, but I'm just going with Nvidia PCSS because I assume they're gonna look good. I haven't noticed anything wrong, any big problems with the shadows yet, so I'm going to assume that it looks good and it's not very performance intensive, so that's why I went with that. Post effects to normal, that's just that it applies some blur effects and stuff like that. It's kind of annoying because there's apparently some particle qualities and gunshot reflection or gunshot like effects and stuff like that are tied into post effects, which annoys me because I hate the motion blur, I hate the in-game depth of field effects and all the kind of things that go along with post effects like lens flares and stuff like that. For the most part, I hate all that stuff. But apparently there is some actual cool effects that are tied into that I wish were separate. But, you know, you've got particles quality and we had them on very high. So, yeah, so continuing on, Anisotropic Filtering 16 times has absolutely no performance impact, and it makes the game textures at a distance look a lot better from certain angles. And then ambient occlusion high and tessellation very high, because I just haven't noticed them to have any big impact basically. And from reading around, I haven't seen them causing any big issues. So advanced graphics, all the advice that you see is if you're having problems, turn these off. Even though it doesn't actually affect the again, it doesn't affect the video memory usage, but for whatever reason, if people are definitely narrowing it down that these do have a big effect. So high details while streaming. High detail streaming while flying on, because again, that's the kind of level of detail off the distance kind of thing. And then extended distance scaling is also like a kind of a distance kind of level of detail kind of thing. So if you've seen part 2, we are no longer in Minecraft. That is some high quality reflections. As you can see there, the texture quality, it's not great, but again, it's on high rather than very high. So if it was on very high, you'd probably get a much nicer texture quality on things like the posters and signs and stuff like that. But however, we are outside now, and I'm seeing 67, 70, 80, pretty good. Ooh, that plane is very. Is it big, or is it small, or is it far away, or is it close? It looks huge from a distance there. Okay. Anyway. I'm certain there's a "that's what she said" joke in there somewhere. But yeah, so let's get in. Let's get into the car and have a roam about. Oh, music off as always. So it's while driving that is obviously, like most people say, that's where the biggest problems is, and I would definitely agree. Driving and in the kind of country areas where there is a lot of kind of grass and foliage, if you have the settings cranked up, that's where you tend to notice the biggest problems. So I'm in the 40s now, speeding around in the 40s, back up into medium to high 50s, 60s, looking good. So the frame rate's not terrible. Again, we're going to go through some kind of, oh crap, we're going to go through some kind of graphically intensive areas and stuff like that and have a look. But as you can see, the game looks good. It looks a hell of a lot better than it did on the absolute minimum settings, as you would probably expect. And if you haven't caught that video yet, I basically listed out that, first of all, my order of preference for, oh god, I thought that was a train. Yeah, so first of all, as far as my order of importance for what I like in games, or what I need to have to enjoy my gaming experience on the PC, first off is this seems to be a very intensive area around this car park for some reason. It seems to get crazy intensive. Sorry, I should finish this thought. Yeah, so my order of importance for gaming on the PC as far as graphics goes is, number 1 is textures. No, sorry, not textures. AA, basically, anti-aliasing. I cannot stand jaggies. I don't think on a GTX 970 in 2015 I should have to put up with jaggies. Like, at least not many. Or not, like, particularly bad ones. So basically, whatever I can do to max out the anti-aliasing in one way or another. So that's why you seen I had some pretty decent anti-aliasing settings on. Then comes texture. So that's why you see texture quality isn't very high. It's only high. So I was willing to trade off that texture thing. There's a few though. I was willing to trade off the textures for anti-aliasing essentially. And then thirdly comes shadows, and then anything after that. Like, shadows are obviously important because a lot of games treat shadows really badly, and you'll get really bad alias jaggy shadows, and they just look awful. So they are important. So they would probably be third, but it's definitely anti-aliasing and textures that are the big deals for me. So I'm gonna head now towards, I believe, the mountains. Oh crap. I believe the kind of grassy areas and hilly areas are over this direction, so we're gonna go over there and have a look. I was just wondering why I couldn't see my minimap. I forgot I disabled it for a video that I'm working on, that you guys will see soon, hopefully, if you are subscribed. And if you're not, you should, because there's some cool stuff. Time lapses are really fun. That's all I'm gonna say. I did oh hell no. Crap. Yeah, time lapses are really fun. That's all I'm gonna say. I've done one quick one, but I've got more coming, more in the works. But yeah, so we're gonna go up into this grassy area, this kind of hill, which I used basically. I used this hill up here to make that original what you call it, time lapse basically. And if you haven't seen that, video whore, I'm gonna link that one as well because that was pretty cool. It wasn't very long, so it's only like 15 seconds or something like that. Stop spinning, let's go. But as you can see, the grass looks a lot better than it did on medium, and we're in the 50s and 60s, so it's not awful. The difference between the grass I have noticed on ultra, between ultra and high and very high and that kind of thing, isn't massive. As long as it's reasonably good, you can get these kind of nice looking blowing in the wind effects from your grass. So again, it's not perfect. The textures and stuff like that on the ground there aren't particularly nice, but again, who spends their time walking around looking at the ground like this? So it's acceptable. As I said, willing to trade off that performance change. Oh, it's smoggy or foggy. But yeah, basically this is where I took that time lapse from. It's a pretty cool little spot. See over the city. But as you can see there, in the 50s, 60s easily. I'm going to kind of cruise around a little bit more, maybe over this side. See what kind of frames we get. Just kind of flying through these intensive sort of areas. I'm expecting drops. I mean, I think it goes without saying, but not really. 60s and 70s. I'd call that a smooth kind of 60 up to 80 there for a second. Not bad. So let's cruise. Crap, I've crashed my car. Gonna have to get something else. But yeah, I'm like dead on 60, 62, 49 though. Here we go again. Again, you'll have to watch these other videos to get it, but I made a point about the inconsistency. It's not so much the frame rate. It can still be anywhere from 40 to 80 to 90, but it's hugely inconsistent. It will be 60 as it was there. I was just saying like, oh yeah, it's 60, 50, 60. That's all well and good. Like a second later, you're down in the 40s. Then a half a second later, you're up into the 60s again. Then a quarter of a second, you're back up into the 70s. Like, it's just really inconsistent. If they could smooth that out, I'd be very, very grateful. But yeah, we're now kind of lost in the middle of nowhere. So I think we'll just wrap it up there. Again, not a benchmark. Not a benchmark. Not doing any crazy runs or like repeating runs and taking down scientific notes and facts and stuff. Because basically I've never done that before. I don't even know how I'd go about doing that. But yeah, just playing the game in a realistic sense. Well, realistic for GTA, not realistic for real life. And just kind of seeing how it goes. As you can see, it looks good. It looks a lot better than it did on minimum set. Whoa, than it did on minimum setting. Sorry. And it's playable. Oh, this is one of my favorite things to do. I'm gonna sign off the video with this, right? Catch the train. Oh no, I missed it. Crap. Get up. There we go. Bye, car. This is one of my favorite things to do. Just to catch a train. Like the first time I did it, I actually literally let out a shout and was like, oh my god, that is amazing. But yeah, that's completely nothing to do with benchmarking or testing games or whatever. So I will wrap it up there. That's the end of part 3. I hope you found this useful, or you found kind of how your setup might compare to mine. Again, you can kind of use your head. If you know that your CPU isn't as good, or your GPU isn't as good, or is better. If you've got a 980, you'll know you'll probably get another extra good few frames per second. If you've got like a, I don't know, 4790K or whatever like that, you'll probably get slightly better FPS and stuff like that. So again, that's it. If you enjoyed it, please do leave a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new here. Thanks for watching. And goodbye. It's cool. Super cool.